Seeking support from friends and family is like having your people gathered around your deathbed. That is so negative. Like, oh my God, Steve, what's your problem, bro? Did you have like a negative AA meeting or something? Like, dude, this is not great advice.
It could change the world. On we go.
Hey you guys, it's Steph. So, welcome to my channel if you haven't been here before. On Coffee Over Apples, we talk about all things art, book, and education. It's kind of like a mix of ArtTube and BookTube. That's what I'm going for. So for today's video, I thought would be a good chance to talk about being an artist and being motivated, since for this year's Owls Readathon, I just completed the book for the Charms class, which is Lumos Maxima, Read a Book with a White Cover. So to complete the class, I read this book, which is The War on Art, Break Through the Blocks and Win Your Inner Creative Battles. I had some serious problems with this book. I don't know if you could tell by like the amount of tabs that I put in it. It's pretty short. It's only like 160 pages, so I read this in under like 2 hours. But you know, I spend a lot of time trying to get my students motivated. I thought this might be a good way to talk about being motivated as an artist, because sometimes it can be challenging to just keep producing work and keep up with the high demand of whatever part of the artistic field that you're into. It doesn't have to be visual arts. It doesn't have to be painting and drawing. It could be writing. It could be acting. It could be music. It could be anything creative, which is what I thought this book was about. So on the back cover, it says, "Do you dream about creating the great American novel? Regret not finishing your paintings, poems, or screenplays? Want to start a business or charity? Wish you could start dieting or exercising today? Hope to run a marathon someday?" If you answered yes to any of these questions, then you need The War of Art. So, it sounds like a self-help motivational book, which at its core it was. But I don't know that it went about it really well. There are a few triggers in this book because he does get very much into fundamentalism. He talks about rejection and things like that. First thing I didn't like about this book was that he personifies positivity and negativity. The author's name is Steven Pressfield. This guy went through some serious stuff, and I get it, but then again, anyone who is pushing themselves out of their comfort zone to try to fulfill their dreams is going to go through the ringer a couple times. It's a part of the process, because no matter what anybody says, success takes time, and success is like climbing a mountain. You're probably going to slip, you're going to fall, you're going to lose your way sometimes, but eventually you will get to the top as long as you persevere. And in Steven Pressfield's defense, he did persevere because we're looking at a published book, and that was his goal. However, that path to success is different for everybody, and so I feel like he tried to lay it out as best as he could in his personal experience, but just again, the words and the way that everything was chosen just wasn't my cup of tea. So he calls the challenges that get in the way of us reaching our goals resistance, and he kind of personifies it in a couple different ways. One of the qualms I had in the beginning of the book was that he kept referring to positive forces as feminine and referring to negative forces as masculine. I just didn't enjoy the personification of the human emotion. I feel like a lot of self-help books tend to do that. They tend to personify something that you might feel. In order to clarify an idea, they tend to personify whatever it is that we're trying to work through, and I'm just kind of over that. I understand that we have to come to terms with whatever our challenge is, but if we are treating it like another human instead of understanding that these challenges are parts of who we are and that we are working to better ourselves and change a part of ourselves or grow a part of ourselves, we can't just cast that aside. In a sense, you kind of have to embrace that part of yourself and say, I understand that this is a natural feeling and that I'm going to work through this, or I'm going to change my mindset. But there's a lot of like casting away and things like that in this book. So on the part where it talks about resistance recruits allies, as if resistance is a dictator. When a writer begins to overcome her resistance, in other words, when she actually starts to write, she may find that those close to her begin acting strange. They may become moody or sullen. They may get sick. They may accuse the awakening writer of changing, of not being the person she was. The closer these people are to the awakening writer, the more bizarrely they will act, and the more emotion they will put behind their actions. Often couples or close friends, even entire families, will enter into tacit compacts whereby each individual pledges unconsciously to remain mired in the same slough in which she and all her cronies had become so comfortable. I can understand if in this one part of the book he was like trying to talk about if you have negative people in your life, whether that be friends or family or coworkers or whatever that comes from, changing your circle of friends to reflect who you really want to be, because that kind of old saying that says show me your friends and I'll show you who you are kind of holds true, at least in my opinion. But like it doesn't stop there. He continues this throughout the book, and he talks about how he came from like troubled times in his marriage and household and all these things. I get that that might have been his experience, but not everybody has that experience, and maybe shaping it in a way that says, hey, listen, if you come from this kind of place, then you can move past that and you can change your environment and your surroundings to better reflect your goals and who you really are on the inside and strive to be. There's nothing wrong with that. But he keeps talking about how friends and family can be really negative. And he doesn't really talk about how they can be very positive at further parts of the book, so that kind of bothers me. The awakening artist must be ruthless, not only with herself, but with others. Once you make your break, you can't turn around for your buddy who catches his trouser leg on the barbed wire. The best thing you can do for that friend is to get over the wall and keep motivating. And he'd tell you this himself if he really is your friend. So, like, I don't know, like it really bothers me doing the whole personification of resistance thing, just because resistance has no sex. Resistance is something that you perceive or you experience, and something that you need to challenge yourself to overcome, and that can come in so many different shapes and forms. That can come in the form of different actions in your life, that can come in the form of a change in job, that can come in the form of something happening at home, or any qualms that you may have. I'm all for the feminism. I'm all for like empowering the woman to be better and things like that. I did not read this book with the intent of delving into feminism. If I really wanted to read something about feminism, I would have read We Should All Be Feminists by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. That's my girl. If you haven't seen her lecture about what it really means to be a feminist, and going through all the different kinds of stigmas that are associated with feminism that society has placed on the idea of being a feminist, please go watch her video. It's really, really insightful. But yeah, I didn't open this for that. I opened this to help me with my artist block. He also gets really religious in this book, which I could not tell at all from the back description. He goes a lot into resistance and fundamentalism and talks about how people who are extremist in their religion are kind of barred off from the evolution, barring themselves from evolving into more creative individuals. And I can understand that in a sense. I mean, I guess if you refer to like how Hitler wanted to be an artist, and when he got rejected, he took that to a whole nother level. If you guys want a history lesson on that, let me know. I'll give it to you. But then he spends the rest of the book flipping between a multitude of quotes from the Odyssey about how creativity is a muse, which should be revered, and then referring to all ideas as angels sent down from heaven, and art is only meant to bring us closer to God, which, if that's his jam, totally go for it. But again, I did not open this book for insightfulness into feminism and Religion. I opened it to get over my artist block. He also has a part in here where he talks about resistance and support, and I completely disagree with this chapter. It says, have you ever been to a workshop? Those boondoggies are colleges of resistance. They ought to give out PhDs in resistance. What better way of avoiding work than going to a workshop? What I hate even worse is the word support. Seeking support from friends and family is like having your people gathered around your deathbed. That is so negative. Like, oh my God, Steve, what's your problem, bro? Did you have like a negative AA meeting or something? Like, dude, this is not great advice. I understand that this might have been what he went through, but this is not what everyone goes through. There is nothing wrong with asking for support. If you have friends and family that are willing to give you the shoulder that you need, the boost that you need, the resources that you need, go for it. Don't sit there and think that everybody is out to get you. Just because that's the experience that he had until he met this one guy later on in his life, doesn't mean that everybody around you is out to get you. Everyone has support somewhere. If you don't have support now, it will come. You will find it. Maybe you do need to change the environment that you're in. Maybe the friends and family that you have are not supportive right now, but that doesn't mean that you can't reach out for help, and it's okay to ask for help. He goes on to say, any support we get from persons of flesh and blood is like monopoly money. It's not legal tender, and that sphere where we have to do our work. Like, come on, dude. He goes on about how the muses, in Greek mythology are parts of, symbolize the creative inner soul and the being and progression of the human race. But then he throws down any efforts for us to become connected as a society, and nobody gets anywhere on their own, you guys. When you get to the top of that mountain, we all stand on the backs of the people who came before us. Someone walked so that we could run. Sometimes we see it and we can recognize all the people that helped lift us up, and sometimes we don't get to recognize that at all, and it may feel like we're on our own, but we got information from somewhere so that we can build upon that information and become better as individuals. So I'm sorry, Steve. I'm sorry that you had some horrible support groups, and yes, there are some workshops that are not that great, but you know what? It's better to try than to not have tried at all. In another chapter, he talks about resistance and the realization of resistance, and this part really made me really upset. He says, what's particularly insidious about the realization that resistance presents to us is that a lot of them are true. They're legitimate. Our wife may really be in her 8th month of pregnancy. She may, in truth, need us at home. What resistance leaves out, of course, is that all means diddly. Tolstoy had 13 kids. 13 kids, and wrote War and Peace. So you have no excuse. Boy, let me tell you something. If your wife is in 8 months of pregnancy, you better make sure that you're there for her, dude. And let me also tell you something else. Tolstoy was a player. He didn't get to where he was on his own either, because his wonderful wife helped scribe the finalized copies of all of his books to send to his publishers. So guess what? The only reason that he got to do what he wanted to do when he had 13 kids was because he had his priorities all out of whack, and he had support from flesh and blood. Guess what? You just contradicted yourself. Oh my God. Did you do any research, Steve? I don't know. He also talks about something that I'm glad that he did talk about a little bit was, when does an artist really call themselves an artist? Like being an amateur versus a professional. And this is something that my students asked me recently. It's like, there's no button you press or certificate you get that says, congratulations, you're a professional artist. Woohoo, let's throw a party. Like, Yeah, you can get a degree in art. Many people might think that that degree is invalid, but just like any degree, it's all about what you do with it afterwards. Any degree can be invalid if you don't pursue it afterwards. That's not saying that people do try to pursue it and then things happen and things change where maybe they go into a different career or they couldn't find a job in whatever it is that they studied, and that's perfectly understandable. That's not what I'm talking about. Because the whole point of this is talking about resistance and motivation and pushing yourself out of your boundaries to become better at what you want to be. So, as long as you keep trying, you are a professional to you when you say you are. There are people who have studied art for years. There are people who have never gotten a degree. Maybe they did an apprenticeship or they did internships, or maybe they're self-taught and they're just as legitimate as the rest of us. He talked a little bit about his experience working on the writing for the movie King Kong Lives, and his experience when he thought the movie was going to be a hit and he had all the right resources and he knew all the right people, and then it ended up being a complete flop, and how much that crushed him. And I liked this little bit that he said here, that was when I realized I had become a pro. I had not yet had a success, but I had had a real failure. You are going to fail 1,000,001 times probably before you make it to your goal. Resilience is the ability to get back up on your feet and try again even after you fail. And I think that's what makes the major difference between a lot of people who reach their goals and a lot of people who don't. Not saying that others try and they don't get there even though they're trying and their efforts are completely legitimate, but that a lot of people make goals and they don't even try to reach them because that fear inside of them holds them back. And I think part of being an artist is just getting up every day and trying to get over that fear and making the best you can out of what you have. Whether that's 5 minutes of doodling, even if it's not something that you're going to be able to use for any major project, but you know what? You got up and you did that doodle. Praise the doodle! I feel like some of his concepts are very similar to the other book called Big Magic, talking very much about how ideas are these ethereal beings that kind of transverse the air around us, and they look for a inhabitant to bring them forth, and if you are not ready to receive that, then it will move on to someone else. And if you enjoyed Big Magic, you might get some of that out of this book as well. So there's one positive thing, I guess, that he did in here. And the rest of this, that is a hot mess. He also talks a little bit about the definition of a hack. He talks about making something that is authentic versus creating something that you think will be more like clickbait or more interesting to the masses and easily sellable. And if that's the direction you want to go in, that's totally fine. I kind of went through a similar thing when creating my YouTube channel. Like, I was watching all these booktubers and all these art tubers, and I was like, where do I fit in? Like, do I have to do all these tags, and do I have to read these YA books that I don't even like YA? Like, what am I going to talk about that's going to be interesting enough for people to want to listen to? But you know what? I realized that if I'm feeling this way, that there's probably other people who are feeling the same way. And the pressures of trying to be acceptable on social media are really immense. And why give into that? Why not just talk about what we want to talk about? And so I'm not worried about that. So he talks a bit on that subject, which, again, okay, Steve, I'll give it to you. You did it for 2 pages. So, when it comes to artist motivation, artist block is a real thing. Even though he didn't really go that much in this book, he really didn't go in this book at all about artist block. Artist block is when you are stuck for a certain amount of time. Now, that could be a short time. That could be a day. That could be a week. That could be months. For everyone, it varies. For me, I've gone through months at a time where I have no sense of creation. I have no sense of wanting to make anything. Either I'm burnt out. Like, right after my last solo show, the month before my solo show, I worked my butt off. I woke up at 4 a.m. No, I woke up at 2 to 3 a.m. every day, made breakfast, drank coffee, worked from at least 3:30, maybe 4 o'clock until 6 a.m., got ready, went to school to teach high school, came home, worked on my lesson plans, grading, then worked on my painting until maybe like 10, 11 o'clock, went to sleep, woke up 2, 3 a.m., and did the same thing over again. As soon as my show was over, I crashed harder than I'd never done in my life. I probably slept close to 20 to 24 hours as soon as I hit that bed when I get home. I don't even think I got out of my clothes from the opening reception. That being said, right after it was over, I hit artist block and I didn't paint. I didn't pick up a paintbrush for like 2 months. And that's completely normal. And every day my husband would be like, hey, Steph, why don't you sit down and paint something? Like, he was really sweet. He would make me tea and coffee and set up my easel and paints. And he'd say, listen, just do. And I couldn't. It was like this fear took over me that I couldn't create anything. And it was scary because I thought I'd already put my best foot forward. What more could I put out there? What more could I create that's going to surprise anybody or be this profound piece of artwork that's going to knock people off their socks and want to put me in this show and that and this and that? And you know what? Not everything has to be the best thing you've ever done. Not everything has to blow people away. It's okay to create something for you. So eventually I decided, you know what? I'm going to take a break from painting for now because I'm just painted out. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to scrapbook, or I'm going to doodle, or I'm gonna, I don't know, do some photography, or maybe some graphic design, or just anything. Or you know what, I'm not even gonna do anything art related. I'm gonna cook. So just doing anything that gets those creative juices flowing. It's okay not to force yourself to continue working on your passion project if you're just not feeling passionate. That's a normal part of the process. Artist block is a real thing. And resistance, I get it, is a real thing. And resilience is also a real thing. It's okay to give yourself a break. When it starts becoming a problem is when that break stretches on so long that you lose who you really are. And so I was lucky enough to have flesh and blood family support to help me get through that artist block. And if you don't have that, there are communities online, there are support groups, there are other people who are going through what you're going through, and just know that it's okay and you can talk about these things. Talking about it gets you through it. Sometimes you might need to do something different, maybe you need to set a deadline for yourself. Maybe you need to make a checklist of different things that you would like to get done in order to get to your goal. Maybe you need to set a timeline. Whatever it is for you, do it. Not every second of every day has to be towards reaching your goal. We live in this society that's this workaholic society where if you're not doing something that goes towards reaching the top of that mountain, then you're wasting your time. No, mental health is a major topic that we need to be open about talking about, and it's okay to take a break, guys. It really is, because you come first. So, all in all, I would say that this book, I'm gonna give it, even though I would say like 90% of this book was completely not related to artist block or with creative blocks or, putting yourself or it's whatever Steve was going for here, 90% of the book wasn't it. So, I would love to give this book a 1.5 on Goodreads. However, Goodreads doesn't let us do half points, so I'm going to give it a 2. Ones are reserved for books that I just really can't do it. Will I be reading this book again? No. Will I be recommending this book to anybody? No. I'm sure Steve might have some other books that he might have done differently or on different subjects. Would I be willing to give him another try? Yes. His writing style wasn't terrible. It wasn't bad. It was just the subject matter and the way that it was executed. So Yeah, this is getting a 2 for me. 1.5 exactly. Alright guys, if you have any questions about artist motivation, any comments that you would like to share, or any tips that you would like to give, or if you'd like to continue this any further, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. I'll be posting videos every Monday. On the topic of pushing yourself harder than you have to, originally my goal was to post videos every Sunday, but I realized that Sunday is me day. I woke up yesterday and I wasn't in the mood to work because I'd worked Monday to Saturday. So Sundays are going to be me day. I'm going to relax. I'm going to do what I want to do. If things need to get done, they can wait until Monday, which means that from now on, I'm going to be editing and posting videos on Mondays. Alright guys, I'll see you next time. Bye!
On we go.
What's it making, Mr. Wonka? Mr. Wonka worked the factory.